worst speech ever. Wow. Last night, this was depressing. Joe Biden had a mission to make things seem as bad as possible, blame Trump, and so when he fixes everything, he'll get all the credit.
Biden's first national address, creepy and dangerous.
The American people, I need you. I need every American to do their part. And that's not hyperbole. I need you. If we do all this, if we do our part, if we do this together, by July the 4th, there's a good chance you, your families and friends will be able to get together in your backyard or in your neighborhood and have a cookout or a barbecue and celebrate Independence Day.
Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble. You see, it's our right to gather under the First Amendment without government interference or permission. Still, leftists in Biden's regime want us to drop to our knees and thank them for allowing us to see our friends and family. A special Independence Day like the U.S. government taking away your independence.
We continue to work on making at-home testing available. And we've been focused on serving people in the hardest hit communities of this pandemic. Black, Latino, Native American, and rural communities.
Black, Latino, Native American, and rural communities. What about American communities? That's all communities. It doesn't matter. I didn't like that part. I didn't. That's the way he suddenly talks. The new woke Joe Biden. What about all Americans? And walked off, I thought, in the most bizarre, lonely manner. Take a look at this. Something kind of weird about this hallway, or the way it's set up. It like goes on forever. See him walk and take it full again. It's like a house of mirrors. There's just something odd about it. Where are those Marines? And usually the president makes a left. That's what Trump did, at least. Donald Trump, President Trump. Anyway, very peculiar indeed. Something tells me he's really not in charge.
Did Donald Trump usually practice a speech before he gave a speech? Because my sources told me it was hard to even get him to read through a speech before he gave the speech. Am I right? Or did he have to practice as much as Joe Reince?
No, he did not. And, the funny thing is I was thinking back on his first press conference after 27 days. And that was a day that he just came in. That was not planned. He came into the Oval Office and he said, you know what? I'm feeling it today. Let's do a press conference. I said, wait, you can't do that. We got to hang on a second. We got to think through this. He's like, no, I'm feeling it today. We're doing it today. And that was the first press conference. And we called the White House staff, set up the East Room, put all of the chairs out. That was that first big press conference, and he took question after question after question. But
that's exactly right. And then he'd get this speech, and he had this infamous Sharpie, and he would go line by line through the speech and make further edits there. But you're right to say this was not something he had to practice 10 times on a teleprompter. Oftentimes, he wouldn't even breeze through it once on a teleprompter after his edits. He was not afraid of questions. We'd be shouting questions at him as he was approaching the briefing room, and that would be the extent of his preparation because he was speaking from his heart. It was authenticity. It was transparency. The diametric opposite of what you're getting from the Biden basement strategy administration.
Also in the speech, something that was not mentioned. It was a brief speech and address to Americans here, but no mention of China, of course, where U.S. intelligence officials believe the virus originated here. Does that sort of give us a preview as to what we could expect for accountability from the Biden administration when it comes to China and its response to the coronavirus?
Well, great question. In fact, we're seeing next week when Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, meets up with Wang Yi in Anchorage, the fact that Joe Biden is having his team meet in Anchorage and not in Washington shows that he's already trying to be deferential to the Chinese. He's already capitulating to the Chinese. I spoke with President Trump about this last night, and he said he would never go and do that. He would make the Chinese come over to Washington to have the meeting. But even worse than that, last night Joe Biden criticized criticize President Trump in a little, kind of a backhanded way, implying that he had done nothing against COVID when President Trump shut down the travel with China and with Europe, got the Defense Production Act to get going on PPE as the cupboard was essentially bare, and as I mentioned before, Operation Warp Speed. In fact, on Joe Biden's inauguration day, they distributed 1.5 million doses of the vaccine. And so for Joe Biden to take it that step further and imply nothing was done, I think is pretty shameful. And he's not going to do anything against China. I think we all see the handwriting on the wall there.
Have you heard from Donald Trump in response to what's coming out of the Biden administration so far?
Yes. In fact, I was with President Trump last night. You know, to your point there, this is something where President Trump is always thinking through these things. And I asked him if he wanted to put out a statement or weigh in or comment on what Joe Biden was doing with his national address last night. He said, nope, if I go and jump in, then they're going to go and match it up for here's what Joe Biden is saying versus here's what I'm saying. Let's let Joe Biden just go out there on his own and watch him faceplant. Actually, the faceplant was my word. President Trump didn't say that, but effectively allow him to faceplant. And that's what we're seeing. Even the mainstream media outlets this morning were pointing out the fact that Joe Biden didn't mention the great work that the Trump administration had done. And I think folks are starting to realize, hey, Joe Biden is asleep at the switch. He thinks he can barely show up and, again, get the award just for participating. And the other thing we didn't hear last night, anything about the crisis at the southern border, which, by the way, Joe Biden created.
Let's talk about, again, the president's future plans here, sort of the impact he could have on politics in America. He is, in a sort, acting behind the scenes right now, releasing potential support for Senate candidates in Georgia. My mind goes to Herschel Walker. He released a statement here. But also let's focus on potentially 2024, thoughts of his own running as well. You've said that former President Trump has not ruled out keeping Mike Pence as a potential running mate in 2024. Does that have the support of the base to keep Mike Pence on the Trump ticket?
Well, great question. And one of the things to also keep in mind is that President Trump, yes, while he has said that he will consider potentially a race in 2024, he hasn't made a decision yet. And so since he hasn't made a decision, he hasn't made any sort of decision about what might happen with even, say, a running mate. There's been no talk internally of swapping out or going in a different direction at the VP spot. And again, we haven't even had a formal discussion about 2024 because President Trump said, you know what, there's a lot of time for that right now. We have the midterms coming up. We got to win back the House. We got to win back the Senate. We got to go win some of these governor's races, especially in blue states where they changed up the election laws. It would be a much different outcome if we had Republicans in places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, the Great Lakes states. But, you know, last night, NRSC chairman, the Republican Senatorial Committee chairman, Rick Scott, the senator from the great state of Florida, had dinner with President Trump where they talked about where they can match up on a number of the candidate recruitment efforts, how we can win back the Senate. It was a very good dinner, shows that the president and the NRSC and Senator Scott can work together to go and win this back for Republicans. But the one thing President Trump wants to make sure, no money for rhinos, and also we need to recruit America First conservatives.
Has Mike Pence met with the president?
They've spoken a couple times since President Trump and Vice President Pence left office. I do not believe that they have actually met in person yet. I know the Vice President is traveling around and doing a number of things with his own TV projects, but they have had a couple of conversations.
This scary portion of Biden's speech signals a sea change in the American citizens' relationship to our government. If we accept Biden's absurd and totalitarian premise, we will be abandoning the Founding Fathers' vision of our government of, by, and for the people. We will then have a government akin to Russia's, Venezuela's, and China's form of government, where the people serve those in power. They serve at the pleasure of those in power. In short, this turns the entire notion of a representative republic on its ear.